Okay. Okay, now that we got this, Baruch Hashem, welcome everybody. We will begin and we will see what happens next. Okay, so I'm Michal Weiss, and my husband and I run a shlichus in Crown Heights. It's called Living Chassidus, and we help post. Originally, we got some brachos from the Rebbe to help post-seminary women in Crown Heights, which means that if you guys want to scoot in, it'll be so much easier. So much easier. You can put your coats in the coat rack, and then you'll have plenty of room. I'm saying that in the most loving way. It's just, it'll help the whole shuffling later on rather than now. Yeah, and then there'll be more room. Okay, sorry. So anyway, so it's about to be 7 years since we opened up Living Chassidus, and we help post-seminary women. Originally, when we started, it was primarily for Bali Tshuva because they're the ones that really don't have that community here, and they don't have that family unit. But Baruch Hashem, over the years, we have opened doors and made programs, and people show up. So we've expanded, obviously not just Bali Tshuva, and obviously not just singles. Hello, welcome. So one of the reasons why we started doing this life skill series is because over the past 9 years of me being married, I've noticed and lived through a lot of interesting situations. Many of my friends have gotten married, and before they know it, they are pregnant, and they spent the entire engagement period taking Kala classes and trying to work on themselves and their shalom bayis and all of these good things, but they didn't really prepare for pregnancy and for what happens after. So I can't even count them anymore. How many of my friends say, I wish I would have known. I wish when I was single, I would have taken the time to really find this stuff out. So what we're doing is we are bringing the information to single women. And obviously there's plenty of married women in the room, so it's open to everybody. But that's one of the reasons why we originally started this whole series. Right now we're going to have Sara Chana. She's going to speak about breastfeeding. If you'd like to check out our previous talks, they are on our YouTube channel, so you can look up Living Chassidus on YouTube and subscribe, and you'll be able to see all these incredible other programs that we do. Next week, we are having two most amazing midwives. They're going to come and they're going to speak about midwives. And because in our previous talks, some of the speakers spoke about midwives and the difference between a midwife and a doctor. And so now we're going to bring two actual midwives, and they're going to come answer questions, discuss whatever needs to be discussed. And after that, we're taking a break for Hanukkah and following up. So keep an eye out for what are the next. So Wednesday nights, we'll be continuing on this topic and different versions of it. Now, as an introduction, we would like to welcome,
go ahead.
Yes, Sara Chana Silverstein. And I did this last time, and it's just, she is, first of all, someone I admire greatly, someone who saved me and many Living Chassidus women in different stages in life, but primarily with their nursing and postpartum section. And she is an incredible author to a book, which I think it walked away. You did? Okay, I thought so. I was like, I don't remember where it was. We have a copy. It's just at her house for now. And she's an incredible author. She is an herbalist, a classical homeopath. She is a top-notch lactation consultant. I've been in her office before when people from out of the country travel in just to learn from her. She has spoken in tons of different TV shows and has been interviewed in incredible locations. So I'd like to give the floor to Sara Chana.
Thank you.
And I'll work on this in the
You'll
meantime.
look at that. It should be, if you search PowerPoint and then I think breastfeeding, and then I don't know, doctors will find it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I can put it down for 1 second. Thank you, ladies. Give me 1 second to prepare. 1 second. My goal was to get her at 5 to 8. That worked. Oh, good. Yours is on top. Amazing. Get out of my You see PowerPoint? It's called PowerPoint? Well, I know you have to like put in the search bar PowerPoint. And then it should say breastfeeding.
IPCLC herbs and breastfeeding final.
No.
AHJ herbs and breastfeeding final.
No.
Case taking as an herbalist.
No. It just saved it. It's on the green one. You see it there? Anyone? Sorry, ladies.
We're all gonna enjoy some snacks.
Do you want? It should. I'll take a little water too. Breastfeeding, and then I think it said best.
Breastfeeding.
Thank you.
Used to be said.
Basics for doctors, nurse, and doulas.
Yeah, but does it say pictures?
Oh, it's not.
Huh?
PowerPoint.
What was that one? Breastfeeding doctors?
It was a doc.
Oh no. I just saved it before I left. Look at PowerPoint. There's a way to have just the PowerPoint come up.
Oh, this is someone saying.
We also have bars.
To the first one?
Yeah.
It should not be a. It should not be a document, it should be a PowerPoint.
Water, anyone? Your we'll just leave it here if anyone wants it.
Yeah, so.
I'm sure. I might write that. The first one.
No, I'm bothered. I have them on.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. I don't care. I don't know why I'm not doing that. Okay. Okay. So how do I control it? Do you know?
Oh, I'll get you a mouse.
Okay.
Mouse.
Amazing. Okay. Let's see. And you want to put up the screen? I'm wearing a turtleneck, so. Maybe I'm gonna do it. Otherwise, it's gonna like choke me. Okay, let's see.
Forward.
Okay, and can we get these lights down so they can see it? I mean, they don't have to see it. I'm really gonna talk, but there are some good pictures in here we can talk about. If not, let's just see. Oh, but I have to do this? Oh, next? Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, that's better. Hi. Okay. I'm Sara Chana. I might have you, how are you? I might have you click the button if we need it. Maybe.
The next button?
Yeah, but it's like you might even be able to do that arrow right there. Yeah. Okay, good. Go back to the first one. Okay. All right. Amazing. So basically, I'm going to talk to you. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming out on this cold New York, Brooklyn evening. This is a PowerPoint that I made for doctors. It's like a 3-hour PowerPoint, which we're certainly not going to go through, but we'll go through some of the pictures so we can have ideas about what I'm speaking about. Okay. So I love this cartoon. It says, I think I like the nesting stage better. So the nesting stage is in the last couple weeks before you have a baby. For some women, they become obsessively clean. They're like, their natural instinct is like to get everything organized. The joke is that you want everything organized before you have that baby. I mean, most of us don't accomplish that, but after you have the baby, it says that in the Gemara that it's a woman's obligation to her husband to breastfeed. So much so that all their household duties take second to the breastfeeding child. All household duties take second to the breastfeeding child. So the question is like, why would it be an obligation to the husband? And I think it's just so they like let things go and let women do what they need to do. It also says that in the Shulchan Aruch that women can breastfeed their babies until age 4 if they're healthy, and until age 5 if they're unhealthy. And the Chachamim say the minimum age of breastfeeding is 24 months, minimum. The Gemara also says that we should have a minimum of a 2-year break between kids. So, like besides like the hippies and like Park Slopies, from women have been more hippie and more green and more alternative than any other generation of people. So really, we're supposed to learn how to breastfeed. We are encouraged to breastfeed. And it's very interesting because I don't have the letter in front of me and I should have brought it. But there's a letter written by the Rebbe. A woman wrote in that she didn't want to breastfeed because she has sensitive nipples. And the Rebbe wrote, and I really should have brought the exact quote. He said, breastfeeding your baby is very, very correct. And he had 2 varies. And he said, even modern doctors have begun to understand the importance of breastfeeding for the mother and the baby. And that's pretty mind-blowing that he wrote the mother before the baby. And it's very amazing that he wrote that it's very, very important and that like even American doctors are starting to understand it. So when I went into breastfeeding, it wasn't because I was like latch or like green or alternative. It was just like, for me, it's a developmental skill like walking, talking, and cutting with scissors. So for me, if a baby's not breastfeeding well, my belief is that you will see it somewhere else in their development. Because it's a progression. You're born, you breathe, your eyes start to blink, you start to inhale and exhale, and then you breastfeed, and your digestive system starts to work, and then you learn to make bowel movements. And so the oral cavity being built properly can only be built when you breastfeed. And there was a doctor named Dr. Palmer who recently passed away who could look at any adult mouth and tell whether the adult was breastfed or not. And breastfeeding flattens out the palate, increases the ability for the teeth, including the wisdom teeth, to come in. It's very hip now to have your wisdom teeth out. But when you breastfeed, you're supposed to not need that. It develops the tongue, and the tongue is a muscle. And when you breastfeed, it's supposed to help with articulation, help with digestion. So I look at breastfeeding as something that we're just supposed to do. So the question should be like, well, isn't it normal? Like, why would anybody need a lactation consultant? Why would anybody need to even have this discussion? And the answer is that I would believe about 8 out of 10 babies have trouble breastfeeding. And maybe my statistic is 9 out of 10. How many people in this room have kids that are potty trained? Did they learn to do it all on their own? Did they wake up one day and say, I think I'm going to start using the potty? No, you have to train them. You have to explain it to them. Any developmental stage that kids have need to be taught. Like cutting with a knife and fork. You don't like having your 3-year-old, here's a steak knife, like figure it out. Like, no way. It was very interesting because I was just listening to an herbalist speak. And I can't remember, it was some indigenous country. And they were saying that their philosophy of raising kids is you never tell them no. That they can explore however they want. And he said, like, kids have limbs missing, they have burns, they have, like, deformities from getting hurt. And he was saying, like, okay, like, wait a minute, we can't go to that extreme. Yes, we want kids to explore and discover who they are, but kids need guidance. When they learn to write the alphabets, you teach them a structure, and then they can add their own personality into it also. So for thousands and thousands of years, women gave birth with midwives. And for thousands of years, women that were the midwives taught the mothers and babies how to breastfeed. And I work with babies number 10, 12, 9, 6. So women will call me and say, oh my gosh, Sara Chana, it's baby number 4. I had perfect breastfeeding. This baby's not nursing at all. And I'm like, okay, well, have enough kids. You're going to see there's kids that have difficulties. And kids can have high palates, low palates. They can have clenched jaws depending on how you push babies out. I've had babies with TMJ and they can't even open their mouth. Babies can be tongue-tied. Women can have short nipples, long nipples, wide nipples, huge areolas. Like, basically, like, we as women, we don't even look at our breasts very much. You know what I mean? Like, we wipe and we close our eyes. You know what I'm saying? Like, but how many other women's nipples have you seen? Like, not many. And even, unfortunately, my women that give birth, when they are with their OBs, they don't even do breast exams anymore. Like, I don't know. Anybody here had a baby? Did their doctor do a breast exam? Yeah. Okay. You're lucky. Like, what, 1? Okay. Well, that's good if they did. But really, like, if I was a midwife back in the shtetl and you guys were stuck only with me, you'd be pretty lucky because I'm kind of smart at delivering babies. But you're like, my whole goal would be, like, the first visit, I would look at your breasts and we would discuss breastfeeding at every single solitary visit. Because here's the bottom line. Cows, goats, and sheep don't give birth in the winter. They don't. Because if they're born in the winter back in Ukraine or Russia or Romania, they'll die because it's freezing cold. So cows, sheep, and goats give birth in the spring, because in the winter you can't, like, have a fire in your barn. It'll burn down. So we, as Jews primarily immigrating from Eastern Europe, meant that we didn't have milk, cow's milk, goat milk, or sheep milk from September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. What yontif do we have in May? Shavuos. What do we eat in May? Dairy. And it's, like, exciting. It's like, oh my gosh, a bite of cheesecake. For us now as Americans, it's like, oh, another cheesecake. I'm having a little indigestion. But what happened was, it was very exciting to have dairy because we didn't have it. So if you gave birth in the middle of the winter and you couldn't breastfeed, your baby wouldn't make it. There is a condition called insufficient glandular tissue, which I am going to show a picture of, where women are born without enough ducts in their breasts. It's a condition. It speaks about it in the Gemara. In the Gemara, it says if you can put 5 fingers in between the breasts, you can have a problem. So this is not a new thing, and I've got to tell you, 99.9% of our doctors don't know about this condition. And probably 99.9% of our midwives don't know about this condition. But this room, at the end of the night, will be able to diagnose this condition. Yes?
All right, what do you mean 5 fingers?
That means that the breasts are very wide apart on the body and there's no cleavage. Right? It's really 4 fingers. But I'm going to show you a picture of it in a little bit. Okay? So if I was your midwife and I saw this condition, this is what I would say. What can you barter? Can you crochet? Can you, like, bake bread? Because I would make a shidduch with her and 1 or 2 other women that after they gave birth, they would donate milk to this woman and she would do something for them, right? We had the barter system. But it wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, you gave birth and you have no milk. And that's what happens with a lot of women. A lot of women will have what is called inverted nipples. And they're like postpartum. They, like, had, like, a horrible birth. Everything fell apart, which happens. And then all of a sudden they have an inverted nipple and they don't even know what that is. So this generation is missing the wise women knowledge of breastfeeding. Can you hit that arrow? Do you mind? Probably gonna be easier. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so breastfeeding is cheap, portable. It's the correct temperature, by the way. You don't have to heat it up. It's 98.6 degrees. It does oral development. You get a higher IQ. It's good for mother's health, baby immunity, bonding, and it is a natural birth control. It is. It is a natural birth control. If you nurse on demand, do not give bottles, do not give a pacifier in the first 6 weeks of life, theoretically, it should set your hormones for the next 12 months, okay? And I want to talk about the higher IQ. So here's one of the reasons that breastfeeding babies have a higher IQ. So let's say I made you guys an omelet with home-baked spelt bread and fresh squeezed grapefruit juice for breakfast. Delicious. And then if I gave it to you for lunch, delicious. I gave it to you for dinner, kind of interesting. The next morning for breakfast, are we really eating this again, Sara Chana? And for lunch, you'd be like, oh, I can't even smell that bread anymore. Because we need change. It's just who we are. Even though we're creatures of habit, when it comes to food, we need change. So when babies get formula, and if anybody gets formula, there's no guilt here. This is just education. So what I know happens is babies eat the food for the calories, but they shut down emotionally because formula is the same taste and smell 8 times a day for almost 2 years. There's no way a human being cannot tune out and just take that food, right? Whereas breast milk says in the Torah that it's similar to man. It tastes and smells different at each feed. So that means mom's going like, ooh, I really don't like that celery that you put in the soup, but I'll still drink this milk. And the next day, ooh, I love that cayenne pepper. So all breast milk stays the same, meaning it's not like Hani has good breast milk and Sephora, or her milk's not so good. So all breast milk is stable in the vitamins and nutrients. It's got the same vitamin E, it's got the same protein, it's got the same magnesium. It's got a consistency of vitamins, but the taste and smell is different. There's only 3 things we can change in your breast milk. One is fat, and all we need to do is eat 2 tablespoons of fat per day. Not a lot. You have a little bit of mayo with your tuna, you're there. A little oil on your salad, you're there. Vitamin C, it's a water-soluble vitamin. It is something that is excreted through our bodies very quickly, and actually vitamin D. But studies show that if moms take vitamin D, it can raise the vitamin D in the breast milk, so we don't need to give vitamin D. So why breastfeed? Because it stimulates the baby's brain. They're like, oh, my mom forgot to use deodorant today, but I still love her. And the next day, oh, did she buy a new perfume? The next day, like, that's an interesting color tickle. Not in her color palette, but that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, they have this relationship that's going on in their subtext, which is making it their life more exciting. They're more inquisitive. Whereas if you give a bottle and you prop it, it's like, oh God, okay, no problem. I'm hungry, I'm gonna eat it. So that's why it builds a higher IQ. Let's see what's next. Go on. Next one. These are doctors. Okay, perfect. Okay, stop. Okay, perfect. Okay, so when babies breastfeed, thank you so much. It's never supposed to hurt to breastfeed. Never.
For who? The mom.
For the mom, ever. It says in the Chumash very clearly that giving birth hurts, and that's why we're forgiven for everything we say during labor, okay? I scream and yell like a maniac, okay? True confessions. And you're forgiven for that because it's in pain. Now, I want to comment about one thing that I said last week, people that were here. So I said that there was the Skver Rebbe who said that women should not go to the mikveh for 3 months after they give birth. Now, if you get clean by 7 weeks, go to the mikveh. Just don't be shocked if you start staining again. Make sense? Or if you're a woman that stains for 10 months, then it's ridiculous for you to make yourself crazy thinking that you're going to go to the mikveh by 7 weeks. Does that make sense? So you don't have to hold by the 3-month ruling. But what happens is, as I'm just reiterating, you can get clean between like 5.5 and 6.5 weeks. And most women will start bleeding between 8 and 9 months. It's called the 8-week breastfeeding bleed. And then you can get clean, and then you can even stain 8 weeks.
8 and 9 weeks.
Yeah, 8 or 9 weeks. And then you can even stain again at 10 weeks, and that's not your period. It's all in normal. So yes, if you're clean and it's not making you crazy to check your bedikas, you can, of course, go early to the mikveh. Okay, I want to clarify that. But so many women really bleed off and on for 12 weeks. They just do. That's the reality. Okay, so when you breastfeed a baby, there's 2 reflexes in the baby's mouth. Between the gums is a biting reflex. Between the hard and soft palate is a suckling reflex. So everybody put your tongue on the roof of your mouth. You'll feel it's hard. Push it back to where it gets soft. So that's a reflex. Just like at your knee, the doctor goes like this and your leg goes boom. It's a reflex. So if you're nursing your baby in this position, which is wrong for newborns, the baby will first bite on the nipple because it'll bite anything that comes in its way. And that hurts. And if you latch the baby on, and we're going to talk about it more as we go on, you tap the baby's bottom lip, bring the baby back, and ram the baby on like a maniac, boom. It's not child abuse. I'll explain that in a minute. Then you will stimulate between the hard and soft palate, and then the baby will suckle. Now, shaken baby syndrome, chas v'shalom, is when you look at a baby and you scream, "Why are you crying?" That's total child abuse because you can ruin all the neurological connections in the back. But when we latch on like this, whing, it's no child abuse because we're holding the baby's back and head. And what happens is if you stimulate the baby between the hard and soft palate, they won't bite. It's not that reflex. Does that make sense? So the reason you want to do a fast, what's called rapid arm movement latch, is because you want to elicit the proper reflex. Does that make sense? And here's the bottom line. Your baby wants to have a good latch 10 out of 10 times. So women come into my office all the time. I'm like, how's breastfeeding? They're like, yeah, sometimes it's okay. Okay, what does that mean? Well, sometimes I'm in pain and sometimes I'm not. I'm like, okay. I'm like, let me ask you a question. When you get into an Uber, if the Uber driver said, you know, sometimes I'm a good driver and sometimes not so good, you jump out of that car. So this poor baby's like, oh God, is it going to work this time? Is it not going to work? Am I going to starve or am I going to get food? No wonder they start screaming. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh my God. So when we latch them the same way 10 out of 10 times, they're going to know they can eat 10 out of 10 times. So you tap the bottom lip till they open, bring them back. When their mouth is wide and open, you go, boom, because they need to get on really, really deeply. And once they feel that sensation, they're like, ah, this is the way to do it. Now, if I was in charge of the world, I just want to let you know, like, let's say there was like, we were voting, okay? Let me tell you what my campaign would be, all right? I would vote that we give birth by unzipping a zipper. Are you in? Yeah. I'd have ounces on our breast. I'd have a see-through window in the baby's stomach to see whether the baby's full or not. And I'd have breast milk last for 12 hours. Nurse at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., right? I won this vote, I know. But like, that's not how Hashem does it, okay? He does it that babies eat every 1 to 3 hours. They eat 8 to 12 times in a 24-hour period. So here's the question. Women say to me, I can't live without sleep, Sara Chana. I can't. I'm just dying from nursing so much. So I'm like, okay, here's the story. Your body was one way before you gave birth. Then after you gave birth, Hashem has to have changed it or he's really cruel. That means that you can nurse a baby every 1 to 3 hours and remain sane if you believe that this is your new norm. If you think your norm is like, oh, I like to do 12 hours on Shabbos, you know what I mean, and sleep till noon, then you're always going to be in a state of like depression and anxiety and nervousness. So I'm telling all of you that there's something about a placenta growing inside your body and then a placenta leaving that changes your sleeping needs. So after you give birth, you have to say, okay, wow, I just did an hour and 10-minute nap. I feel rejuvenated. Or wow, I got a 45-minute nap, because we know that power naps do make a difference, okay? So really you have to change your attitude because this is the way Hashem created the world. Okay, let's do the next one and see what we got next. Okay, so stop. Thank you, perfect. Oh, you're so great. So if your baby's on your nipple, you're going to have pain. So let me explain something else very fascinating about breastfeeding. So how many people in this room have been pregnant before? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. And those of you that haven't, don't worry. You're going to be there before you know it. So when you're pregnant, you can be nauseous, have a headache, have a stomach ache, not feel well, but you don't feel your uterus growing. Nobody says, oh my God, I feel pain. It's stretching. You don't feel that. I'm telling you, because the way the structure of the uterine walls are that they can stretch pain-free. Here's what nobody's going to tell you because they don't know. The structure of the areola is stretchy like the uterus. And the baby can be on the areola and pull it back into their throat, and you won't have pain. The tip of the nipple has nerve endings. This has nerve endings. So if you're in pain, it means that the baby's on wrong unless you have yeast. How many of us have had yeast in this room? That's a whole nother discussion. Yeah. But besides yeast, if the baby's on the nipple, you will have nerve pain. If the baby's on the areola, you will not and cannot have nerve pain. And everybody's areola is different sizes. So you don't have to put the whole areola in the baby's mouth. Like some women come in with areolas like this big, and they're like, I can't get the whole areola in the baby's mouth. And I'm like, well, if you did, we'd have to call Hatzalah. So that's not our goal. You know what I mean? That's not our goal. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, let's see. So, okay, that other one back is good. Okay, so you can see this is called a sandwich hold, and you can't tell, but the nipple's going way back into the baby's throat, and this woman has no pain whatsoever. Okay, let's go on for some more slides. Nope, babies can eat all the way into their throat. Let's see what's next and next. Next. These are just all, we don't need all these. Next. Okay, let's go back to that. Hold on, let's go back to that other one. So this is not a good latch because the baby's nose is smushed into the breast and the baby's chin is on their chest. So everybody put your chin on your chest right now and imagine drinking. You know what I mean? There's like no way you could physiologically do it. So when babies come to my office and the women say, well, I nursed 10 minutes on one side and 10 minutes on the other, the baby's not gaining weight. I'm like, because you're like suffocating your baby for the first 10 minutes. And the second 10 minutes, the baby's like already passed out. Like, what's going on? So when I go to drink a cup of juice, I have to tilt my head back. And you always want to make sure that your babies, when they're on the breast, you tilt their head back so they're in a swallowing position, okay? Another thing is that, like, if I'm at a l'chaim and I'm sitting here and someone goes to talk to me, and I'm like this, I can't drink either because it's like my neck is in the way. When I want to drink, my nose has to be in line with my belly button. My head has to be back. My shoulders open. And I have to use my muscles in my back. So when I teach babies to breastfeed, it's like a Pilates class. And when you have your babies in the right position, they're developing their whole physical being. Again, we're going to tap the baby's bottom lip till they open, bring that baby on, tilt that head back, and I want the back being supported, the chest being supported, the nose in line with the belly button. So what you're going to find with raising kids is that consistency is very important. So kids like adventure, like me. Like adults, we like adventure. Like if someone said to me, tomorrow, I just got you tickets to Hawaii, I would be like, oh my gosh, are my nails okay? And let me see, do I have clean clothes? But I would get on that plane tomorrow because it's exciting. Kids will do that. If all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, we're going to the trampolines, they'll run out there. But kids like consistency. They like one hook for their backpack. They like one place for their shoes. They like to know Tati's going to be home and make kiddush. Kids generally like consistency with that little icing on the cake of fun. So breastfeeding is not the icing on the cake that sometimes they get the milk and sometimes they don't. They like consistency, right? Tap the bottom lip, bring the breast in, tilt head back. They want that consistency so they can have adventure in between, okay? Next slide. Thank you so much. You didn't know that you were going to be in this position. Okay, stop for 1 second. So we're going to start talking about nipples, maybe. And everybody's nipple is different. Some are long, some are short, some are fat. Okay, let's go on and see what's next. Okay, let's go on. More. Thank you. Okay, so stop for a second. So we have flat nipples, inverted nipples, small nipples, large nipples. Outside this community, we have pierced nipples. We have double nipples. And we have some women that have two different nipples. Their right side can be different than their left. That means they're going to have two different latches. Next slide, thank you. That means that they kind of have like two nipples that are almost formed into one. So the baby has a lot to get over. They just have to do a very deep latch. So this is a long nipple. I'm just showing you this because I just want you guys to like know what's out there. And you can maybe say, oh my gosh, I didn't know, Sara Chana, I have long nipples. This is a very long nipple. So you have to work very, very hard to get past the nipple because we have in our breasts 18 to 25 ducts or straws. Some women could have 25 and some could have 18. So if women have more ducts, the babies will get faster, fuller. And if you have less ducts, it will take a little bit longer for the baby to get full. We all have 10 exit holes, and the ducts that are stimulated are way back here. It's kind of deep inside the breast tissue that creates the milk, okay? So the nipple is really a funnel which allows a large quantity of liquid to go into a small baby. Let's do the next slide. Thank you so much. This is a smaller nipple. Do you see the difference? Can you guys see how the latch would be completely different? On the first one, the other one's easier. It's just they're going to have more pain. This one's a little harder to latch onto. The mother. So what happens with those long nipples are that they latch the baby on, and the baby's on, and the baby's happy because they have, like, you know, those guys with the cigar hanging out of their mouths and open shirt with the hairy chest and the gold chain, right? So they use that longer nipple like a cigar. So they're just hanging on there. And then after about a week, the nipple starts to tear down and they get these big cuts in it, right? So this latch is different than the other latch. This would be an asymmetrical latch. So the first latch with the long nipple, hi, welcome, would be a fast RAM, rapid arm movement. A nipple like this is called an asymmetrical latch. You tap the baby's bottom lip till the baby opens wide, and you get the baby's bottom lip on before top lip because there's not a lot of nipple hanging out. So you would go, I'll show you guys, here's my breast right up here on my bottom, top. That would be the latch. So look at the structure of my jaw. If I want to get both pieces of bread, because it's after Pesach, and oh my gosh, I'm plotting, and this is soy cheese, by the way. This is not like a cheeseburger, right? So I would compress the hamburger, go to a hamburger joint and watch this. This is how people eat their hamburgers. They go. They have to, otherwise their lips get in the way, okay? Same thing with breastfeeding. When you go to breastfeed a baby, you want to get that bottom lip on first. So on one level, this is an easier breast, and another level, it's a harder breast. Next breast. Just so you guys can see. Okay, that's a small areola. Next breast, please. The areola is the brown part, and that's a large areola. This is the woman I'm going to call Hatsala if you try to get that whole thing in. But both these are normal. Does that make sense? Next one. This is an inverted nipple. The nipple kind of pulls in on itself. Next one, please. And this is a really inverted nipple. It's like, excuse me, like, how do you get it out? And this is very hard to latch a baby on. If you have an inverted nipple, you're going to need something like this called a nipple shield, okay? And you should know this the whole 9 months. It's not like, oh, I had a baby, I had no idea I had these nipples, right? So you would use a nipple shield. It's like this. And then we make an imaginary nipple because that nipple does not exist, okay? So these are things you want to know the first month you're pregnant, not when you're postpartum, depressed, a little overwhelmed. Next one, please. Yeah, sure.
Do nipples change over pregnancy?
Sometimes. The areola can get darker. The question was, do nipples change during pregnancy? Not dramatically, but the areola will get darker. You know why? So babies can identify the areola. Did I say this last time? Right after you give birth, you know how they take the baby and they put the goop in the baby's eyes and they stab them in the leg for vitamin K? Did we discuss this last time? Yeah. So imagine those that weren't here. You come into my office. I'm like, hi, it's so nice to meet you. And I blind you with goop in your eyes and stab you in the leg with a shot. You'd be like, I'm never going to that woman ever again. So when we first give birth, the reason we don't want the goop in the eyes right away is because we want them to be able to identify the areola that turned darker. Okay?
So generally, the way women's breasts are before, like generally the same shape that it needs to be.
They'll get a little bit bigger. The fat tissue will get bigger, but they're very similar to what they are. Yes. Okay. That's a very long nipple. You have to work really. So if Hashem, like sometimes I laugh and I like have a client in my office and I look up at Hashem, I go, are you serious? like he like made a joke. Like he found the woman with like the longest nipple in Brooklyn, and he found the baby with like the smallest mouth in Brooklyn, and he's like, okay, try to do this one, Sara Chana. And I was like, are you kidding me? So if this is a very long nipple, you've got to, I mean, this is like, oh my gosh, it's like you have to bring the baby from here onto the breast. Like it's really hard. Next one, thanks. And that's a big nipple. That's a quarter. That's like really big. Let's see the next one. And okay, that's the next one. Okay, next one. And that's like a doorknob shaped nipple. You know what I'm saying? So what happens with women like this is the baby uses you like a human pacifier and just hangs off there and looks at you. It's like a cute little smile, and you know you're bleeding from it. And so you have to know what you have. Next one. Okay, so now we're going to go really quickly about a baby. So now you have to know when you walk out of here, women have different shapes, areolas and nipples. And I really do believe that it's our obligations as moms to like look at your girls' nipples. You know what I mean? Like when they're little kids, look at them. And then when they're teenagers, you got to say, I'm not going to look. I'm going to keep my eyes closed. But can you just like, hold on 1 second, because I want to see them. It's so funny because I work with my daughter-in-law. It's hard. No one wants their mother-in-law to see their nipples, right? So I said to her, I was like, okay, don't worry. Okay, I'm just going to keep my eyes closed and let me just try to help you. So she was like, okay, you can peek. So I was like, okay. And finally, after about an hour, she goes, okay, just open your eyes, but don't tell anybody you ever saw me. You know, and I walked out of the room. But with your girls, you need to know it. And I'll have women call me up and say, Sara Chana, I think my daughter's got inverted nipples. I'm like, if you love her, when she's about 17, 18, tell her. Let her know about it. Let her do some research. Let her meet with someone like me. Don't rely on that doctor or midwife doing it, because she's going to have a different latch, and it's her body. She should know. Okay, so with kids, we've got another thing. So we've got mom's nipples and areolas, which are different shapes and colors and sizes and textures. Hashem made such a variety. And with kids, we have high palate, bubble palate, clinching jaw. We got babies that are high tone. They can have an overbite, tight frenulum. I don't believe in lip tie. They can have a weak seal, low tone. Let's go to the next one. I'm going to define them all right now. Okay, so, you know, these are doctors. They try really hard. And this is the baby's head right here, Mrs. Walsh. You know what I mean? Like, okay, let's go on to the next one. Some doctors are my friends. And also, I want to let you know that we discussed it before, but the epidural medicine enters the baby's body and creates an inability to coordinate, suck, swallow, breathe for up to 2 weeks postpartum. So if you're having an epidural, it's fine. But then you need to know your baby may not be such a good nurser and you may need help. Make sense? But to not know that, like a lot of women will come to me and say, I was 8 centimeters and I got an epidural. And at 8 centimeters, you can start pushing. You can start having your baby. And they're like, the doctor said it could be another 3 hours. The women are going through transition at 8 centimeters. It's not going to be another 3 hours. Then they get the epidural and then everything slows down for like 4 days. So that can disrupt the induction. The last reflex that comes into a baby's life is the sucking reflex. So I had babies that are almost 10 pounds and they were induced and they didn't even get their sucking reflex yet. So really, because Hashem, in the womb, the babies swallow amniotic fluid and pish it out. So babies like drink their urine, okay, for months and months, right? Maybe that's why some of our kids are a little nutty. No, anyways, but they swallow the amniotic fluid and they urinate it out and they swallow it. So that's going on inside the womb, but very few babies suckle. You can occasionally get a picture of a baby sucking their thumb in the womb, but that's very rare. So they don't really suckle until they come out into the womb, to the world. And here's the most important thing. Babies for 9 months are fed through their placenta, okay, through their belly button. Okay, so we have to assume, I mean, not many newborns have spoken to me too much, but they assume like, oh, well, whenever I'm hungry, I get fed through my belly button. Like, we assume that they don't experience hunger or thirst. And then they come out in the world, and a lot of these babies are like, okay, I'm waiting to be belly button fed, like, what's going on? And they like don't want to breastfeed, by the way. They don't want to latch on. They just sit there waiting for things to change. So sometimes we have to encourage babies to breastfeed and say, oh, no. You are in the world of gullus. You ain't seen nothing yet. You think this is bad? Wait a couple years. But in the interim, let's get you some food, okay? It's like a big transition from a celus down to gullus. So epidural, induction, pushing positions, pain medication can affect breastfeeding. Premature babies can. The eye drops, the vitamin K shot, separation at birth, and bottles. So we discussed it last time. Did we talk about the importance of bacteria? Did we discuss why babies are skin to skin?
You can bring it up.
Oh, okay. So the reason we want skin to skin is for one reason and one reason only. It's to colonize the baby's skin with bacteria. So inside the womb is theoretically the only sterile place in the universe. But now I told you we found up to 10 pesticides in our amniotic fluid, very sad. But when the baby comes out into the world, they're sterile. And this is a big bad world of bacteria and viruses, and they need to build up their immune system right away. So the reason we do skin to skin is our stomachs heat up after we give birth. They become a human incubator. The temperature, the exterior temperature of the belly goes up. And then what happens is our bacteria comes and colonizes that baby. And then we go to breastfeed, and where's the stinkiest place in our body? Under our arms, thank you very much. And this bacteria is running down our arms and colonizing the baby's mouth. So I think I told you last time that if you're not in the mood to hold your baby after you give birth, which happens all the time, rather than putting that baby in the warmer, you get your husband that's wearing an undershirt, sits his shirt, stinky, bad breath, little extra food in his beard, and he can like spit on the baby. I love you. Oh, you're so wonderful. And at least that baby will get your husband's bacteria as opposed to a stranger's bacteria. So it's very important. And I don't bathe the babies for the first week of life because I want that Vernex, which we discussed last week, all over the baby. You can clean their heads, but basically you want that because that Vernex will help protect them. So back to breastfeeding, because that was our topic. So separation at birth and bottles can mess up breastfeeding. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go on next. Huh? Bottles can mess up because when you use a bottle, your mouth is in a shape like this. And when you breastfeed, your mouth is in a shape like this. The jaw is relaxed. The muscles are relaxed in your jaw. Last I could have TMJ, I have TMJ painful. And their tongue comes forward. So the muscles used for bottle feeding and breastfeeding are completely different. Different groups of muscles. Next one, thank you. Okay. All right, we don't have to talk about poops of the baby. Let's go ahead. All right. Should we talk about poops of the baby? So, okay, let's back up. Let's back up. Thank you. So the first bowel, next one before that, the first bowel movement, thank you so much, is meconium. That's been inside the baby's tummy for the 9 months. If you break your water and you see brown or green, God forbid, that's meconium and you want to go to the hospital. If you break your water and it's clear, it's no problem. So this will come out whether your breastfeeding is going well or not. Breast milk, the colostrum has a natural laxative in it that helps push out the meconium. If you have a boy and you want to have that bris on the correct time, you need to make sure this meconium passes very quickly. I want this passing in day 1 or 2 so the baby will have the bris on time. Next slide, please. The next stools become like a green yellow. That's the meconium mixed with the yellow breast milk. Next slide, please. Next slide. It's very seedy, and you want to see a minimum of a quarter size of the stool by day 3. Next. And there's a good, wonderful poop. Now, mind you, I teach doctors this. Go on, next, yes. And it's seedy, and it's gross, and it's interesting because the halacha is that if you change a fully breastfeeding baby, you can say Tehillim and not have to wash Nagelwasser, which is totally amazing. If you change a formula baby, you have to wash your hands, but not breastfeeding. Next slide, please. And there's more yellow poops. Okay, next. This just means that the woman's giving a little bit more of the fore milk and not letting the baby eat efficiently, and it needs to be more yellow than green. Next. Because what happens is sometimes babies sit there and use you as a human pacifier, and they just get a little bit of the milk and then they fall asleep because they have an epidural or they were induced, and they're not getting the rich protein in the back, and the diapers will be more green and less yellow. Okay, next. That's just, okay, we're not up to that. Okay, by the way, some girls will have their first menstrual cycle in their first couple days of life, and it's the hormones from the mother, and that's nothing to be scared about. That's really her first menstrual cycle. If we see orange, that means the baby's dehydrated, but red just means that she's a girl and she's getting rid of your hormones. Next. Yeah. Okay, next. Okay, perfect, stop, perfect, okay, yes. This is a woman whose breasts did not develop during adolescence. She has underdeveloped breasts, and she is not going to produce breast milk. Next one. No, you have to make peace, except this is your hashgacha pratis, and you are happy that you're not bartering making bread for someone for their breast milk, and you're going to use formula. So this is the condition called insufficient glandular tissue that I want everybody to know. Like, I would love to have like billboards all over the world, like, you know what I mean? Because these are babies that will get dehydrated and go back in the hospital. And this is so easy to diagnose. And 99.999% of women are with their OBs or their midwives for 9 months and never get diagnosed. It's cruel. One breast is larger than the other. We see that every woman, when you go home and look tonight, we all have a little, one breast will always be a little bit larger than the other. But this is a significant, this is like a size A and a size B, and we have like a size A and a size D. They're very wide apart on the body, and they're missing tissue underneath. Next slide, please. And here's another example. This woman is not going to have enough breast milk. Okay, she is not. So this is someone that needs to be told that, not when they're postpartum. They need to make peace with it their whole 9 months. You're fine, you're healthy, you have a beautiful baby, everything's fine, you can get a padded bra, don't worry about it, no one's gonna notice. Believe me, they know about it. And what's even worse is a lot of these women go and get an implant in one side or breast reduction, even from girls, because when they wear t-shirts in the summer, they're so asymmetrical. And then they go to get their chasana dress on, and it seems just it's like, oh, we got to do something about this, and they feel mortified. So I have a lot of women that have breast implants, and it's not so they can, you know, like look like this. It's so they can be symmetrical. She will make some milk, but not enough milk. And if you work with me and you get a bracha from Hashem, we can usually keep the babies on the breast for a period of time, because even if they get out a tablespoon of breast milk, there's still immunity in it. Next page. So here's just another picture, very pointy and to the side. And I try desperately to teach doctors about this, because this is a condition. If you were back in Europe and you didn't know about this, your baby would not make it. So when we hear, Rahman, about people that didn't make it in Europe, the babies, I'm always like, did that mom just have insufficient glandular tissue and they didn't know? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to diagnose this in 1 second, 1 second in my office. It's not even a question. Okay, next slide. Okay, so if you can see underneath this breast, there's a lot of breast tissue, and we want breast tissue underneath the breast. Okay, let's see what the next slide is. Okay, go on. This is just for doctors. Okay, let's go on. Next one. Okay, so tongue tie. See that little cord under the baby's tongue? That needs to be clipped, because that will not allow the tongue to do the peristaltic movement. So that's called an anterior tongue tie, and literally there's like no nerve endings there, and midwives used to keep their baby nail a little bit long, and they would put a little pressure on it, and it's less painful than biting your cuticles. I mean, we've all bitten our cuticles in here, right? This needs to be clipped. And what's very fascinating, with what our Hasidic moils do not know, what's the plural of moil? Moilim? Yeah, okay. What the moilim don't know is that when you have this under the tongue, you're going to have an extra little piece of ligament in the boy's private area. And when the lidfish do the bris, they pull back the foreskin. And the moilim, will be able to tell you by looking at the boy's private area if the baby's tongue-tied. Unbelievable. The Hasidim, I'm not sure where the custom came from. Are they lazy, or is there some Kedusha? I don't know. But they never pull the foreskin back. But it's called a midline defect. And when you see it in the tongue, you will see it in the penis area. How fascinating is that? Yes.
Someone mentioned that she'd heard that the babies, like, they have it clipped, it could be like possibly related to like lisps or speech.
Well, if you have now, there's a little bit of controversy, because usually I have like a PowerPoint thing, but there's something called posterior tongue tie, which is very controversial. It helps with some babies, thank you so much, and not with others. But if you have a tongue tie, and I have another one that's even tighter, you can't say the word lamed, love, or most importantly, lollipop, right? So they'll go, lollipop. And you're like, oh, only if you see it right. They're like, I can't, my tongue's tied. So yes, this is a speech thing, and I would clip it without a question. No, then you'll be fine. You'll be able to say it.
I was wondering, 'cause, like, I do know a child who had their
Tongue clipped?
and now they can't say lift, they say yip.
So he probably has other problems. Because this will fix a LAMID problem. So I don't know if he has a posterior tongue tie. I mean, I can send him to someone. I have a doctor we can send him to. But I'm a big advocate of this. And if I could legally do this in my office, I would do it. But I can't. I have to send you to a surgeon. Well, now they just take a scissor. And I know it sounds horrifying, but there's no nerve endings there yet. There's no nerve endings. It's kind of like, you know, like biting a cuticle. Next picture. Let's see if we have another tongue tie. Can you move back to this? Oh, good. Okay. That's the range that a tongue needs to say your LAMIDs and your lollipop. That's the range you need. Let's see the next one. And this is an adult with a tongue tie. He's the one that can't say the LAMID or lollipop. Makes sense? So it's really important. And now as an adult, that's like major surgery. As a kid, it's like you go to my Dr. Goldsmith, he clips it, you walk out, and you're like, it's done. Next one. Yes. There's a tongue tie also. You see that one? There's no way that child could say LAMID or love. And that will impede, and that'll get really sore nipples. Next page. Okay, we don't need this one. Next. No, next. Next. Huh? Okay, stop right there. Huh? No. Mm-mm. It's not part of modern medicine because, truth be told, breastfeeding is not part of doctors' classes. Breastfeeding is not part of the curriculum. It's just not part of American medicine. The statistics a couple years ago were that less than 20% of people nationwide breastfeed past 6 weeks because so many of these complications can come up and people don't know where to go to. In Crown Heights, we have a really high success rate, Baruch Hashem. I'll take some of the credit. And in the film world, Baruch Hashem, we have a very high because I'm telling you, my Williamsburg women will come back 75 times to get those babies to breastfeed. My Monroe ladies will drive 3 hours, 10 times if they need to. So breastfeeding in the Jewish world is very important, very important. So, and we have to problem solve. And again, it's not only baby number 1, it could be done baby number 5 and 7 and 6. And so I want everybody to know if you have a perfect experience with baby number 1 and baby number 2 is not breastfeeding, you can fix it. You can fix it. 99% of the time we can fix it. Yeast is a whole nother thing. So if a baby's not breastfeeding well, there is a technique called SNS, which is called the supplemental nursing system. I don't like to use it much, but we can take a bottle, put a tube down the breast, and the baby can get formula and breast milk at the same time. These are babies that would be high tone or low tone or have a weak mouth or we're waiting for their tongue tie to be clipped. So we can always solve problems. Next. Next. I don't care about that. It's just for doctors. Next. 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 Okay, let's go. Next. Okay, so here's a nipple shield. So if I have a woman with an inverted nipple, I'm going to have them purchase a shield, and they come in different sizes, just like shoe sizes are different. And they will use this, and they may breastfeed with this their entire breastfeeding experience, but no big deal. I tell them to buy 5 of these. Have 1 in your purse, 1 under your stroller, 1 in your car, 1 in your mother-in-law's house, 1 in your mother's house. Huh? Yeah, because you lose them all the time. They're clear. Okay, let's go next. Yeah. So next. Boring. Unless you're a doctor, go. Okay, perfect. Okay, now stop. So sometimes I have babies that don't breastfeed well. They were induced. Maybe they were failure to thrive inside the breast, inside the womb. They feel the placenta stop giving nutrients to the baby. Let's say a baby's born and just not coordinated. I mean, like some kids get on a bike and they ride right away. Some kids write and their handwriting's neat. Some people's handwriting's messy. Really, even with breastfeeding, some kids develop slower. Doesn't mean they're not smart. They don't get it right away. And so we do a technique in my office called finger feeding. It is extraordinarily successful. What we do is we put our finger in the baby's mouth, and we have a dropper, and we drop the milk into the baby's mouth. Why we put the finger in the baby's mouth is because it keeps that tongue flat, and it keeps the jaw relaxed. And if for any reason, even let's say a mother gets an appendicitis, bad things happen to good people right after the birth, and she's back in the hospital, we'll finger feed. Sometimes a woman gives birth and then her 2-year-old, bottle feeding, good question. Sometimes a mother her 2-year-old will break her leg, like, are you kidding me? And they go back in the hospital. So, because when you bottle feed, your mouth goes into this position, and when you finger feed, your mouth is And this teaches the baby that
Similar to breast.
this teaches the baby skin gives milk. So if you give a baby a bottle and a pacifier, I feel like we have to have like Plastics Anonymous for babies that get addicted to the plastic. And then you open up your shirt to breastfeed and they scream, they go, ah, what is that? I've never seen anything like that. And it's true, because I have a baby that just came to me the other day, a premature baby, needed surgery right after birth. Things happen. And the baby was first fed by IV, and then gavage fed with a tube down the nose. And then finally they gave the baby a bottle and they released the baby from the hospital. Baby's 4 weeks old, never saw a breast in his life. It doesn't even know what a breast is. Doesn't know, you know what I mean? Like, has no idea. So every time the mother goes to breastfeed, the baby screams like a maniac. So she's like, but I love you, don't reject me. And the baby's like, I have no idea what I'm rejecting. Like, baby has no idea. So then we'll finger feed for a half a week or a week. And the baby will like go, oh, skin's okay. Oh, I can eat this way. And then we can transfer babies back onto the breast. Yes.
And you do it with breast milk or formula?
I could care less. Right. Correct. Anything. If the woman wants to pump, she can. But, you know, like not every woman can get milk out of a breast pump. You know why? Okay, let me explain it to you. So I go into Zara, right? And I go with my teenage girls and I want to buy clothes, and like nothing really fits me so well. You know why? Because the Zara model is not a 5 foot tall woman that's given birth to 7 kids and is a little Zoftic. You know what I mean? They're not like, oh, I'm going to design my clothes for a 5 foot tall woman. They have like 6'7" models that are from Sweden, right? That's what their clothes are in Zara, let's be honest. So what I'm saying, why am I saying that? Because the models of the flanges on the breast may not be your shape. Do you know what I mean? They'll take like, you know, this is the typical breast, and they build their flanges around that size. So not every woman can pump well. So even if you are breastfeeding well and you go back to work and you try to pump, you may not get any milk out of the pump. So it really depends on the shape of your nipple, okay? So we finger feed because not everybody can pump, and you can give formula, I don't care. This is finger feeding. Let's see the next slide.
So when you babysit, you should finger feed.
Well, this is the story. You should never go back to work until 6 weeks. Never. You should give 6 weeks to acclimate the breastfeeding, and your body should recover. You're a Kimberter for 4 weeks, 30 days, and we have this great website. Thank you so much, which you will share with everybody, that has help for women. What's your website called again? Mothers of Crown Heights, woo! And there's help and there's information and resources. And the first 4 weeks of life, you should be staying home with your baby. And then you give yourself that extra 2 weeks of 6 weeks. And if your baby's a rock star breastfeeder, you have no pain and you're getting lots of dirty diapers, you can go back to work and the baby can take a bottle. Any baby that's a good breastfeeder can take a bottle. What happens with my clients all the time, and this is one of the ways I pay tuition, true confessions, is women breastfeed their baby for 6 weeks. Baby's a little ornery, fetchy, never really got the breastfeeding very well. They go back to work, the baby gets a week of bottles and doesn't touch the breast again. Then they have to come back to me, they have to go off of work for 2 weeks, and we fix everything, right? So if you fix it in the first 6 weeks, the baby can take a bottle. It's only the babies that are not good breastfeeders. So if you had, I have some women that they like give birth and they have to go back for 3 days and then they'll get paid the whole Pesach, right? So they call me up and go, Sara Chana, my baby's 3 days old, but I'm going to work for 3 days so I can get the money for Pesach, and I get it. So then I will ask the husband or the mother or mother-in-law to finger feed those 3 days, and then we don't lose the breastfeeding, okay?
How do you do finger feeding? Like, I'm saying, how many minutes are you doing?
Watch, you just give with a dropper. It's much like if you're going to give the baby 2 ounces of formula or breast milk, you give them the whole 2 ounces this way. Next.
Yeah, how fast?
It's a technique that I teach. Yeah. I'm just telling you that any situation, next slide, I think I have another picture of it. There we go. Any situation where you have to leave your baby in the first 6 weeks for whatever reason, God forbid your mother's in the hospital. Do you know what I'm saying? Crisis has happened. If you have someone with clean hands that washes their hands, you can go ahead and finger feed the baby, and then there'll be no nipple confusion. After 6 weeks, I don't care. You can give a bottle. Okay, this is called finger feeding. It's a wonderful technique.
You're saying after 6 weeks, you can switch.
Correct, yes. This is really the first 6 weeks when we're imprinting. So this is how the brain works. We learn things with our prefrontal cortex, the front of our brain, and we figure it out. And when it makes sense, it goes back to the hippocampus, which is the back part of the brain. So you can't really give a second way of feeding until the prefrontal cortex has made peace and understood that breastfeeding. Then it's second nature when it's in the hippocampus. So when you give a baby a bottle, and a breast and a pacifier, they really don't master any of the things, okay? But we want to master it for 6 weeks, and you'll have freedom for the rest of your life. Yes. A lot of my clients will be past 6 weeks, and they're going on a plane to Israel for 10 hours, and they're like, Sara Chana, I mean, some women have huge breasts. They're like, I cannot breastfeed continuously on the plane. What do I do? Like, okay, on that plane, you'll give a bottle. Your baby's already a good breastfeeder. Make sense? Okay, next one. Next. Oh, go back. See, this is a flat nipple. That's a hard latch. You understand? So I'm just going to reiterate with my little puppet here. I used to hate puppet shows as a kid, but watch. This breast, you've got to really go over. So the baby gets breast tissue because there's no nipple there. Does everybody see that? So this nipple can be breastfed on, but you need to know how to latch a baby onto that. Next slide. Sometimes yes and sometimes no. But if you keep on going, if you have the proper latch, who cares? Let's keep on going. We don't need about breast infections. We don't need, thrush. Let's talk about thrush. Thrush is painful. Who's had thrush? Yeah, so much. So sometimes you'll see yeast in the baby's mouth and sometimes you won't. If a woman is strep B during delivery, that means they take a culture vaginally, and if you're strep B, you'll get an IV during delivery. Then the mother will get yeast in her breast and you don't see it, but you may not see it in the baby's mouth. Next picture. This is painful.
For the baby?
Oh, I'm so sorry. The white.
Yeah.
The white in that baby's mouth is not supposed to be there. It is a yeast overgrowth. So sometimes babies are born and they put them in the NICU for many reasons. They'll give the baby a couple IVs of antibiotics. The baby will get thrush in their mouth 2 to 6 weeks later. Sometimes women that are strep B positive during delivery, 2 to 6 weeks later, they'll feel it in their breasts. This is just very painful.
Is there a way to avoid it?
Try to avoid antibiotics in the last trimester of your pregnancy. Try very, very, very hard.
How long does it take for the baby to heal?
Every baby's different. It usually manifests 2 to 6 weeks after antibiotic use. And some people get thrush even without taking antibiotics, just sometimes like hormonal shifts, nervousness, stress. Absolutely. Next slide. These are different ways to treat it, because remember, this is for my doctors. Let's go. Perfect. Oh, okay, let's go back. That's a good one. But how do I know he's getting enough? So babies on the breast need to do 450 swallows on the breast per feed. That means that if they're hanging out there and they fall asleep and they're like speaking to Malachim and thinking about what they want to be when they grow up, like, oh, what's that bow I'm going to wear to pre-1A? Then they're not eating. So women come to me all the time and go, well, isn't it exhausting to breastfeed? I'm like, no, it's exhausting to clean for Pesach. Let's get this straight. Breastfeeding is not exhausting. If you have a car in the snow, digging it out, that's exhausting. So when babies are on the breast, they need to gulp and swallow in, gulp and swallow in, gulp and swallow. And if you train a baby in the first 6 weeks of life to breastfeed well, train them. It's a training, just like potty training, just like using a knife and fork. Babies can fill up their entire tummy in 6 minutes by 6 weeks. But that means you need to have them on the breast. And I do a technique called breast compression, where you compress and release, and they go gulp, 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 gulp. You compress and release, they go gulp, 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 and they go to sleep. You take them off and go, yeah, right. You think you're sleeping on my breast? You can go on Tati's arms and sleep. Mama's breast, if you're eating, you got to be active. So if you take them off every time they're not eating, they're like, what did I do? What did I do? Okay. And then if they're eating, you don't take them off, believe me, their prefrontal cortex gets it very quickly. And you can teach babies not to use you as a human pacifier unless you have a cleaning lady, a cook, a chauffeur, a maid, a mother's helper, and full-time nanny for your other children. If you have that, you can be a human pacifier for hours. Anybody in this room have that? You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have that, then you need to teach your baby to eat efficiently in 6 minutes. Make sense? And that means that if they're sitting there hanging out, you go, not here. No, wrong place. Makes sense, huh? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You need to teach them. You know, I always joke, like, you have toddlers, and you say, we're going to the park, and you put them in the high tree, and you go, you have to eat now because I'm not feeding when you get to the park. Like, now. So they play with their food, and they The noodles get on the floor, right? And they're playing with it. And you get to the park, and what's the first thing they say? I'm hungry. You're like, are you kidding me? I only have 20 minutes in the park. Okay, sit down. I'm feeding you, right? We do that all the time. So you don't want that kind of behavior. You know what I mean? I'm always the one that feeds them at the park. How about you? I mean, I wish I was strict and say, oh, no, Mama told you no eating at the park. But I feed them. But not with breastfeeding. With breastfeeding, and especially, like, think about it this way. This is my example. You're on your way to Israel, right? And you already called the Uber. And you fed your baby an hour ago, right? And your plan was to feed the baby after you went through security and the baby wakes up. So we have a couple choices. If you have a 45-minute feed, you can say to your husband, sorry, we're missing the flight. We're just going to throw away that $1,200 that you spent because I got to feed the baby. Or you can go like this. Here's the dealio. Husband, go down to the car, put in the car seat, put in all the luggage. My baby's done in 6 minutes. We will not be late and we will not miss the plane, right? So you want to acclimate your babies to eating quickly and not long, right? Because then you can feed the baby, birth the baby, feed the baby, get him in the car seat. He won't be screaming the whole way to the airport. You'll get through security. You'll get to the gate, and it may be an hour and a half, 2 hours later, and you'll say to your baby, okay, let's do it again. I'm ready. I've got time now. Does it make sense? So women that have 45, 50-minute feeds don't have a life. You go shopping in Manhattan with your friends. You're finally at Century 21, and the baby wakes up. You say to your friends, look, I'm going to miss this store and H&M. Just go shopping without me. I'm going to be in the dressing room for 45 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. Just tell me if there's any cute shoes. No, you want to feed your baby in 6 minutes and go shopping with your friends, right? So you can train them at an early age. Okay, let's go on. Next. Oh, let's see what this one is. Can you guys read that one? Okay. Go back. Yeah, that was our humor for the day. I'll read it. It says, someday when I'm very old and you're all grown up, I'm going to sit on your lap, soil my pants, and scream in your face all night. So it's very funny. We live through that, and then they forget very quickly. Okay, next. Let's see what else. That's just a great burping position, and we don't have to go through all this. Okay, we're fine. Oh, destroyed nipples. You don't want your nipples to look like this. Next page. You don't want your nipples to have cuts like that. That's a baby with a tight frenulum. It's going to make that kind of injury to the nipple. Let's go on. That's a baby who, like, the mom, called me on the phone and said, you know, everyone says it's supposed to hurt. I think something's really wrong. The baby had gnawed off part of her nipple. It was like missing. I was like, is it on the floor? Did you keep it? It was horrifying. Okay, let's see next one. Okay, so that's another cut. Let me see another cut. So let's go on.
You don't feed them while you have the cut.
Oh, you do feed them, but you get them on. Let's do the next one. You get them on properly. So you want to avoid all that. And if you have a good latch, you can 100% avoid all that pain. Let's see next. Amazing. Oh, say, huh? For the doctor's headache. Okay, that's another one. Go ahead. That's for my doctors. Okay, let's go on. Let's see. It says, well, maybe it's not that bad. It really is worth it, especially when you look at me like that. So, you know, like a lot of women will go through a lot of pain for their babies. But here's the truth of the matter is, like, there's places to be a martyr in the world, and I'll give you the list, but it's not breastfeeding. Being in pain means the baby's on the wrong place. Having a baby that's screaming means that there's something we need to fix. You go to a doctor and they say all babies scream. And I mean, I only scream if something's bothering me. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I'm screaming when nothing's bothering me, I need help, right? So the same thing with the baby. So if they're screaming, there's something we need to fix. And if your nipple is falling off, you need to come fix it. So I want everybody to know here, like I said in the beginning, in the Chumash, it says very clearly that giving birth hurts, very clearly. And it does. But nowhere did the Chachamim speak about breastfeeding hurting. Nowhere. So I know it can 100% be fixed. And if your baby's crying, we need to fix something. Next. Okay. That's okay. These are just, okay, let's see. Next. Let me see this one. And let's go on. Let's see what else I have here. Okay, next. Okay, I think that's the end of that one. So I wanted to show you one more thing. And then we'll open for questions. So when babies are born, you know, like I teased very much about, like, if I was creating the world, but Hashem really did a good job at it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just kind of kidding around when I say that. So when babies are first born, their stomach is this big because Hashem doesn't want them to have hunger inside the womb. So they're born, and this is the side of their stomach. When the colostrum comes in, colostrum is the first milk. It's the thick yellow milk that is originally in the breast. 1 tablespoon of colostrum is equal in calories to 2 ounces of formula. So you can make a mistake, your baby can make a mistake, you don't have to be so smart, your baby doesn't have to get it yet. And what happens is all you need to get out the first 2 days is a tablespoon per feed. That means Hashem for 2 days gives you a big leeway to figure it out and get to someone like me or someone that knows what's going on with breastfeeding. So after 2 days, their stomach stretches to this size. That's it. By day 4 or 5, their stomach stretches to this size. And by day 7, they need 2 to 3 ounces of formula, or breast milk, I'm so sorry. So what happens is you are given a couple days to get it to work. But it is very sad to me if boys don't have their bris on time because the mother was never taught to breastfeed. Meaning, so many boys' bris get pushed off because the baby's yellow or jaundice. And when a baby's yellow or jaundice, you don't need to give formula like the doctors and the moiling, can we say that's the plural, tell you. You just need to fix the breastfeeding. Because if the baby is getting in enough fluids to clear the bilirubin, then you can have that bris on time. So my philosophy is like, if you're going to take a knife and cut something off my son, it better be on the right day or forget it. So bilirubin or jaundice comes in on day 3, peaks on day 4, and descends on day 5. Does that make sense? Bilirubin is when babies get yellow or jaundiced. Okay, so what it is it's the red blood cells of the mother needing to leave through the liver. So we don't need to give water to get rid of the bilirubin. We need to give protein, okay? Now, if your baby's liver is about this big, my liver right now is about that big. Livers get really big in our bodies, okay? Livers are what get rid of pesticides, stress, food coloring. It's what filters everything that goes through our body. So babies' little livers are about this big. And if you, I'm being honest with you. If you get an epidural, they have all that epidural medicine in the liver. If you get induced Pitocin, they get all that in the liver that they have to metabolize. And then you have the mother's red blood cells. Then this liver is getting rid of the yellow or the bilirubin, and it will take longer and there'll be more yellow. So that's a time that I would finger feed a baby to make sure they get as much fluids as possible so they can push it all out of their systems. So, in addition to breastfeeding, we would still breastfeed, but I would assume that the baby needs that extra push to get that bilirubin out of the liver. So it's really important to work with someone. And yellow babies are just, unless you're negative. Does anybody here know if they're blood type negative? Are you blood type? So your baby is going to be more yellow than other babies, by the way. So you need to work with someone like me during the pregnancy to have a plan. This is not a PR for me. This is a PR for living Chassidus. I'm just saying that when you have a negative blood type, it's rare that you're going to marry a husband that's negative, but you could work that out. You could write on your resume, I will only date someone that's also blood type negative, because then you'll never have yellow babies. But negative is more rare than positive. And if you marry someone who's positive, you have a likelihood of getting of having a baby that's more yellow. Okay. So it's very important to know that, because you can fix those things. Does that make sense? And I don't want yellow babies, because what happens when you have yellow babies is they get more tired. And if they're more tired, they sleep more. And if they sleep more, they get more yellow. And if they're more yellow, they get more tired. And if they get more tired, they get more yellow. You get into these vicious cycles where babies aren't waking up very much. Okay? So anyways, I'm going to conclude by saying this. We're going to open up for questions. Breastfeeding is never supposed to hurt. Never. If it's hurting you, something needs to be changed. If your baby is not a good breastfeeder, you need to work on it, because if your baby wasn't talking, chas v'shalom, you'd be at a speech therapist. If your kid wasn't walking, you'd be at a PT. If your kid wasn't drawing or cutting with scissors, you would be at an OT. So for me, the breastfeeding needs to be fixed because it's a developmental part of their lives. And breastfeeding, and the problem with the internet, ladies, is that you never know if it's a formula company pretending like, hi, my name is Janine in Wichita, Kansas, and It's so, breastfeeding's so hard. Formula companies do hire people to play as women on the internet and give, what is fake news? Misinformation. So it's really best to like follow one person, like if there's a lactation consultant that you like, or one person to shkafa, because really on the internet you get so much good information and so much wrong information. Okay. Any questions about breastfeeding? Yes.
So, like, how soon after having a baby would you recommend for women to go?
My women in Williamsburg go Mount Sinai, Sara Chana, Williamsburg. Beth Israel, Sara Chana, Monroe. Earlier is better because babies make habits very quickly and you want them to habituate in the correct way. And I don't like this experiment, like, you know what I mean? Like when I want to like make challah for me, I like wanted a recipe when I first learned it. You know what I mean? Like this is how many eggs, this is how much yeast, this is how warm the water is. Now that I know it, I can be a little bit more creative. I add basil and onions, but at first that foundation needs to be laid. Yes. What's your opinion on nursing while pregnant? I think it's fine. I think it's fine. Yeah. The question, thank you. The question is breastfeeding while pregnant. So I advise women to stop breastfeeding by the 7th month of pregnancy, just so that the older child can learn to fall asleep without breastfeeding, learn a different relationship with the mother, and is not jealous of the baby. I don't believe in tandem nursing, but you can breastfeed. There are 2 different systems. There are 2 different hormonal systems at work. And a lot of times women will get pregnant and quit breastfeeding and then chas v'shalom have a miscarriage. And they're like, I had such a perfect relationship with my baby. Like, what did I do? So I'm an advocate. Sometimes women will get pregnant while they're breastfeeding, and then they're told by their doctor or their OB to stop nursing, and then they lose the pregnancy, and they had this perfect relationship with this 1-year-old child. So I don't like you to quit breastfeeding until you're 5 months pregnant, because that's usually when the pregnancy is locked down. Yes.
Yeah, can you speak about the process to nurse clean?
So theoretically, if you don't give any relief bottles in the first 6 weeks, unless we need to finger feed, no pacifiers in the first 6 weeks, no putting a baby on a schedule, you need to nurse on demand. Does anybody know why we're not time bound by mitzvahs? Women are not time bound by mitzvahs. I know why. And we get that 18 minutes on top of the 18 minutes to light candles. I mean, I use because it goes off early and then the buzzer goes off and then you have 18 minutes. There's like 2 sets of 18 minutes. I hold by those. But anyways, so we're not time bound by mitzvahs because babies are not time bound. Like they don't get it at all. So when you nurse on demand and not put them on a schedule, and they nurse on a 24-hour schedule, not at night. And I do believe, and it's very controversial, that women need to eat for their blood type. That will make a big difference with staying clean. Yes, next question.
How do you know how long to keep the baby on a certain side and then switch?
So the question is, how do you know how long to keep the baby on until you switch? So every baby's going to eat at a different speed, because some people are fast people and some people are slow people and some people eat quickly and some people are aggressive. It's a lot on the personality. But what we do in our office is if the baby's gulping, the baby can stay on the breast. If they stop gulping, we compress and release, and that shoots milk in the baby's mouth. So theoretically, what I like women to do is nurse for about 5 to 7 minutes, take them off and burp them. If they don't burp, who cares? Give them a minute. Same breast, 5 to 7 minutes, take them off, burp, and then dessert on the second side. So it's anywhere, in the beginning, it's anywhere between, the whole feed should be about 15 to 30 minutes, but not longer than that. Because in my office, we teach babies to eat and not use you as a pacifier. So you want gulping. Like if they're not gulping, you tilt their head back and push their chin in the breast. If they're not gulping, you go, hey, by the way, truth is, if you stop eating, you're getting taken off. Like there needs to be rules. And so when babies get it, they'll learn to nurse quickly. Very important. I don't like you to be a human pacifier unless you have a cleaning lady, butler.
You mentioned that breastfeeding is more advantageous to like bottle feeding because it's like stimulating, because it like has like different tastes.
Yes.
So if somebody has to bottle feed, like maybe the glandular tissue issue or whatever, should they is there something they could do to like flavor the formula?
Such a great idea. Doctors are very into, I love that question, once you start with one formula to like stick with that formula. Make sense? They don't want you to give some soy-based formula and then dairy formula, I guess, because of the growth and the vitamins and nutrients. I mean, sometimes women will borrow some breast milk. We have a breast milk gemach. We have one in Borough Park and one in Williamsburg, and there was one in Crown Heights. And sometimes we'll give a baby a bottle of a friend's breast milk per day. But according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, you should stick to one type of formula. That's a great question. I don't have a great answer for that one, except that I would probably borrow some breast milk. Women used to share breast milk all the time. In the Sfardisha community, I don't know if you know, like, remember we used to go wash our clothes down by the river? I mean, I would never want to give up my washing machine, never. But so they had women that would stay up on the hill and watch the kids, and a group of the mothers would go down and wash their laundry, and then they would switch. So the philosophy of the Sephardim was that if one mother breastfed 2 kids, they weren't allowed to get married. So they would keep tabs on it. It was very interesting. But nursing each other's babies was very, very, very common in the Jewish world, and a very common practice. I had a woman who was a twin, and she had some kind of medical issue going on. I don't remember the details, but her sister flew all the way out from Australia, pumped for about 2 weeks, brought her own baby and pumped, filled her sister's freezer with breast milk, and got on a plane and went back. And in Williamsburg, a lot of bubbies breastfeed their grandchildren. Don't freak out. What'll happen is these women get married at 17, and they have to go back to work because their husbands are in kollel, and the bubby will have like 3 of her daughter's kids. And she's a breastfeeding mom. And she'd be like, okay, this is the little sister. Oh, this is my granddaughter. And they literally, they breastfeed in Williamsburg. People breastfeed each other's children.
Like, meaning for her younger
sister, yeah.
Her mom was out.
Yeah. Well, there's a famous story in Gluckle of Hamlin. Very famous story. Do you guys know about Gluckle of Hamlin? So Gluckle wrote a book in the 1600s, not about breastfeeding, about life. There was a custom that whenever boy and girl went to the chuppah, the fathers would write a history of your lineage, right? And it would say, this was your grandmother, this was your grandfather, because we didn't have computers or anything. So Gluckle had 12 or 14 children, and she decided when she married off her first son that she was going to take the husband's role, and he passed away, and she was going to write the whole lineage. So what happened was Gluckle had more to say than just one page of lineage, and she ended up writing a book. So how did they used to get back at Jewish people, the non-Jews? They would have book burnings. It was very, very famous. They would take all this forum, put it in the middle of the city, light it on fire, and they would say, oh, now we're going to get rid of Yiddish intelligence. That's one of the reasons we have the oral Torah, and that Jews used to, little boys used to memorize Pesukim because we never knew if there was book burning. So what happened was someone found Gluckle's book and said, there's no way a Jewish woman could read and write in the 1600s. And it actually went into a German library, and that's why we have it today. Because we all know that Jewish women were always taught to read and write. It's not a strange thing for Jewish women, but for the world, women did not read and write. Why am I even telling you the story? Well, A, it's fascinating, and B, there's a story in there that she was with her mother, and this is when her husband was still alive. And I may not be quoting it perfectly, but basically, Gluckle fell asleep, and she woke up in the middle of the night, and her baby wasn't in the cradle. And she started screaming and yelling, oh my God, someone snuck in and took my baby. Oh my God, hysterical, hysterical, hysterical. And her mother walks out and says, what's going on? And she says, my baby's gone. And her mother runs back to the bed, and she had picked up Gluckle's baby and had nursed that baby back to sleep instead of her own baby. Her own baby was sleeping in the cradle. So there in the 1600s, Jewish women were nursing each other's babies. So it's very much part of our culture. Well, we don't really know what was going on so much pre-World War II. After World War II, we have post-traumatic stress disorder. Those of us that lived through the war, our parents and grandparents, so we lost a lot of our Jewish customs because herbs and aromatherapy and midwifery was all part of Jewish custom. It's not just for Park Slopers. We've been doing it. So I don't know why we lost that. Any other questions?
Do you have to eat like more because you're breastfeeding?
That's a great question. So it says in the question was, do you need to eat double or eat more when you're breastfeeding? So the Gemara says that Hashem made a chesed and turn the breast milk from red to white so women are not repulsed by breastfeeding their babies. So breast milk is made from blood. So you don't really need to eat that much more food to make more blood supply. So the answer is, I mean, they say you have to have like an extra sandwich, maybe an extra cup of water. But the breast milk is created from blood, and under a microscope, it looks very similar to blood. And so you don't need to eat that much more. Yeah. Yeah.
People nowadays aren't drinking what they're meant to.
Correct, yes.
So do you want to just reiterate?
No, go ahead. You talk about it. I agree with you.
No, just most people nowadays are not, by the time you feel thirsty, you already dehydrated to a certain extent.
Yes.
Most people are not hydrating enough. So that's
Yes.
why when people start nursing, they feel it even more because of that
Yes.
extra pull on your hydration. So
8 to 10 cups a day is what's required for all of us. We don't need to drink more than that when we're breastfeeding. But that's a good point. We do get dehydrated. And those of us that have had 7 or more kids, you know, you have to drink so much because you never know where the closest bathroom is. So it becomes a problem also, yes.
Is the first feeding sensitive?
No.
No?
No.
Everyone tells you the first one is painful.
Well, they'll say like the first week is painful. But if you latch that baby on properly, you go to latch that baby on, and the baby hurts you, take baby off and go, we're starting our relationship on a bad note. That's not how it works. Try it again. It hurts. Go, okay, listen, you got to learn this because I can't be in pain. So really, it's not supposed to hurt right away. So when you have your doula, you can make sure that they're going to help you latch that baby on. And you need to know your nipples. Are they flat? Are they pointy? Is one larger than the other? Is the areola large? You need to know what's going on with your nipples so you know how to do the proper latch. Yes?
That's amazing. Is there a way to avoid PPD when someone's pregnant?
Yeah, is there a way to avoid PPD, which is postpartum depression? Yeah, I don't believe completely in postpartum depression. I think that it could be postpartum lack of support. That's why we have our website, Crown Heights Jewish Women. And did I say it right? It's, yeah, perfect. And usually women that get postpartum depression had some depression issues before they had their baby. So there is something called postpartum psychosis, where we believe, I mean, these are women that want to like jump out the window, chas v'shalom. You know, that's really something you need to be hospitalized. But usually, you know, if you get the support you need, like I remember a Moyle said to me once, like, what do I do with these women? They're like so emotional. You can't even like talk to them afterwards. I said, oh, well, if you get them a vegetable platter with a wonderful dip, they'll be better. He's like, no, I'm talking about what do you do with their emotions? I'm like, get them a vegetable platter. So if you had vegetables right by you, like some carrots and some celery and a yummy dip, I don't even care if it's a mayo dip or a tahina or a hummus, and you could just snack on that through the day, your blood sugar levels will stay more stable and you will have a less likely chance of getting depression. And
that's when you get pregnant before.
This is after. And commercial break. If you read the book Moodtopia by Sara Chana, I talk all about moodiness and depression and sadness. So there's a lot of tips, although it's not specific. It's about tame your moods, de-stress, and find balance. So the book that I wrote is all about moody women and how not to be so moody. So I do believe that the support you create during your pregnancy for post-pregnancy can avoid 95% of postpartum depression. You need someone there to cook for you. You need someone there to, It's a little bit hard. You want that support. You want someone bringing over smoothies. You want people juicing for you, bringing over salads and soups. The more support you can get postpartum, the less chance of postpartum depression. That I know for a fact. Yes. And yes.
Okay, so say you're not able to breastfeed.
Yes.
And yet you don't want to use formula. Can you use a breast milk amount?
Yes.
Is there like more health benefits from using like,
So I can't legally say that. The question was, if you can't breastfeed for some reason, can you use a breastfeeding gemach? And legally, I'm supposed to say no. But in the frum world, the answer is people do it all day long. And we have gemachs. And you can go speak to the women that run it, and you can organize it ahead of time. And yes.
But you would have
Yes.
to do it with the finger?
No, if you're not going to breastfeed at all. But first of all, even women with insufficient glandular tissue, we can very often breastfeed the babies. We just have to supplement them. So for the first 6 weeks, we'd give finger feeding, and then after 6 weeks you could do breast and bottle. But every situation is different. If you know you're not going to breastfeed, then that's something that you work out before you give birth. It's too complicated to work out after you give birth. Yes.
Can you retrain a baby how to nurse? Like if you nurse a baby wrong for the first 6 weeks, can you retrain?
Yes, up until about 9-10 weeks, you can retrain them. After 10 weeks, they get very stubborn and very set in their ways, and their personality emerges. And you can't like bribe them like, I'll give you 3 chocolate chips if you latch on better. Do you know what I mean? Like, here's $100 if you'll breastfeed better. They look at you and go, you know. So really 0 to 10 weeks is really the time to fix the breastfeeding. Women come to me all the time at 3 months, and then it's a lottery. Like maybe yes, maybe no. Yes.
Do women come to you before they have a baby?
Yeah. Yeah, all the time.
Mhm.
Especially if their sister had a problem or their mother had a problem, or, you know, they saw a disastrous situation. It's always better, in my opinion, I'm sure you agree, it's always better. I'm an herbalist. It's in prevention. We can't always prevent, but the more tools we have, like postpartum depression, I'm telling you that if you have someone bringing over a smoothie every day and some fresh juice and some vegetables and maybe a big pot of soup, the likelihood of getting depressed diminishes. If you have someone there, if you have a boy and someone there is helping you arrange the bris and not you, I remember my bris, my second bris. A couple of my friends said, oh, we're going to help Sara Chana. This is way before we catered. There was like, no one had a catered bris. We're going to help Sara Chana. Great. Do you want us to make salads? Great. And literally 2 of my friends brought over a salad this big. I was like, oh my God, like I could eat that right now. So I started sobbing and sobbing, postpartum depression, sobbing. And I stayed up till like 2 o'clock in the morning cooking for my breast. It was dumb.
Is that baby blue or baby blue?
That was freaking out, losing my mind. You know what I mean? And the next bris, I just had bagels and cream cheese and catered it. Do you know what I mean? Like, so, you know, like that was just bad planning on my part. And, you know, if I didn't have the wherewithal, I could have gone right down that hill. That was really a bad scene for me. Yes.
You mentioned in the Torah it says that you should breastfeed for 2 years, you said?
Halacha, Shulchan Aruch says minimum of 2 years if you can.
Mm-hmm. So like, let's say with the oldest, technically you could do that. Oldest child, because you're saying if you have like a second child, then older one.
Right. Well, but if you're breastfeeding on demand, you usually stay clean a little bit longer. You know, it gives you... Stay clean is to not get your menstrual cycle. So theoretically, you know, everybody's different and everybody's blood type's different and everybody's stamina is different. And, you know, so a lot of things are, you know, around that. But theoretically, you know, if you're eating a lot of vegetables and you're eating a lot of protein and you're, you know, somewhat getting along with your husband and, you know, you're deep breathing maybe once a day for 1 minute, maybe taking some calming herbs, then you should be able to stay clean and not get your period for at least 6 months. WHO, which is the World Health Organization, will not give birth control all over the world under 6 months if you're breastfeeding. Like once you say you're breastfeeding, you can't get birth control because they know it works minimally for 6 months. So.
But is that 3 months you are staying?
You can bleed on and off for 3 months. Yeah, and you can maybe only going to bleed for 7 weeks. I'm just throwing it out there that it can be longer.
But bleeding and your period might be different.
Right.
I think that's what you.
Okay, so postpartum bleeding is when the uterus is contracting and going back to its shape and size, and you can have bleeding or staining without your period. Your period is when you start getting it every month, and you should not theoretically get your period for 6 to 12 months if you plan it right. But everybody's going to be a little different. I mean, that's our goal. That's our goal.
So that's if you eat healthy, you said?
Nurse on demand. Don't put your baby on a schedule. Limit the amount of pacifier use in the first 6 weeks. There was a study done in South America. They had city folk and country folk. And the country folk menstruated on an average 6 months later than city folk because the city folk were more modern and giving pacifiers more. And the country folk were like, spend money on a pacifier? And so they didn't get their period for much longer. So that's what the studies are showing. If you give it for a reason, then it's fine. Like if you know you're going back to graduate school at 6 weeks and your husband's going to be babysitting 3 nights a week and you want to give him a tool, that's fine. If you have to go back to work and you want to give the babysitter a tool. But if your baby's crying, you know, like I always joke like this, okay, so you're in your house and you start to cry. And you have all these emotions that are going on. And your husband comes home and you start to cry and tell him what's going on. And he takes this pacifier and he goes over, okay, I hear you. And he walks out of the room. You'd be like, what? I didn't even begin. You know what I mean? So if your baby's crying, I'd rather you talk to your kid than go, yeah, I have the solution. Because then you really want to encourage your kids to talk to you. And especially when they're teenagers. So I think from day one, if you have a colicky baby that has a lot of allergies and has reflux and digestive problems, then you may really need a pacifier. But it shouldn't just be stum.
Right.
And in England, they call it dummies. Hi, you're so intelligent, you have high IQ here, I'm giving you a dummy. It doesn't make so much sense to me, yes. Say it again, if what?
Put the baby to sleep. Use the pacifier.
You can. I mean, that's a decision, but then I would like you to make an intellectual decision. I have decided that I'm going to have my child have a slight addiction to a pacifier in order to go to sleep. For the next 2 years, right. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Some kids are miserable kids. Some kids are unhappy. It's reality. Some kids are born happy. Some kids are born not happy. Well, when you suckle, it does create a hormone of relaxation in your body, but the breastfeeding should satisfy it. You shouldn't need non-nutritive sucking. You shouldn't. But you shouldn't need it. A company that's making millions of dollars, and you need to invest in their stock, not mine. Don't invest in my stock. So the pacifier companies, which is a multi-million-dollar company, maybe billion now, want people to think that babies can't soothe themselves without a pacifier. That's what they want you to believe. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, you're just financing them. They didn't have plastic. They did their finger. Who just said that? Yes.
What do you think about
They did their finger. We didn't have plastic. Or their husband's finger.
Right, but that's even worse. You have to walk around with your kid.
Oh, no, they don't get addicted to your finger so much.
I'm not trying to say something. Kind of like what you were saying, like a wife crying and saying something.
Yeah.
You don't speak. So any cry, I've seen a lot of kids that are like have a burp or something, and they just like somebody just shoves a
Right.
pacifier and it just pacifies them, but it doesn't solve the problem.
Right. I'm into trying to solve problems. I mean, sometimes I can't. Yes.
What about some studies?
Well, they say in indigenous countries, this is what studies show, but I haven't been to many indigenous countries, if you nurse on demand, that they don't find any thumb sucking. And some people believe, some craniosacral therapists believe that when babies have difficult births, they were pushing for way too long, we discussed pushing last week, that babies will take their thumb and push up on the roof of their mouth and trying to do an adjustment. So sometimes these babies are trying to make an adjustment to their head, and that it's actually brilliant that they're doing it, and that's where the thumb sucking comes in. Yeah. So maybe get a craniosacral adjustment for your kid all my kids, I did go to a craniosacral therapist to do craniosacral is, how do you describe craniosacral? You lay on the table and they put their hands on your neck and the spine and they see if there's any tension. I got it for all my kids postpartum. Because pushing is hard. And I scream like a maniac during delivery, and I don't want like long-term drama for my kids. So, yes. Yeah.
But when I was like 22 or something, in a craniosacral session, I had an adjustment on my hip from how I was born.
Yeah.
From when I was pushed out.
Yeah.
And that's like, I would never thought it was good.
Yeah. So if I see a baby that's thumb sucking pretty early, like if someone comes to me at 6 or 8 weeks and baby's not happy, and even after breastfeeding, the baby's trying to stick their finger in their mouth, I'll send them right away for a craniosacral. That's like a number one sign that something's going on, Huh? Sometimes in the womb, sometimes, yes. Not as often as we think. So those are the pictures, that go all viral because it's like really exciting, but not so much. Yes, any other questions? Yes.
How often should you nurse a baby?
Every 1 to 3 hours from the end of the feed. The doctors tell you from the beginning, but that's insane. When the baby is fed, burped, get their hiccups. Hiccups are a normal muscle spasm of the diaphragm. We don't know why, but it's normal. After they've done that and burped and pooped and you have a new diaper, then you start counting to the next feed. And it's 1 to 3 hours. Huh? They should. That's a good sign. That means that they're eating and digesting, eating and digesting. Yes.
Sorry, 1 to 3 hours. So which one? 1, 2,
It's
or 3?
every baby's going to be different.
How do you
Every
know when they start
because
crying?
they should eat and you should be able to soothe them, even if you have to hold them. If
Yeah.
you hold a baby and they're calm, you're in good shape. If you hold a baby and they're screaming, you're not in good shape. Babies want to be held, but here I'll tell you something very interesting. What's the woman's name, the researcher? Oh, I can see the book. Our energy field. We have an energy field. Now, this is not breastfeeding. This is hard. We have an energy field, one arm in front of us, one arm to the side, and one arm up. If you take like an infrared light, you will see we have this bubble that we create around us. Did anybody see Seinfeld, Close Talkers? I know, it's very funny. It's very good. They're like, oh my gosh, those close talkers. So when someone comes up too close to you, you're like, whoa, this is my field, right? So we have this energy field. And then when you're sitting next to your husband and he has his arm around you, your two energy fields actually come together and make one field. So in Native American, the women believed that for the safety of their spirit, they would wear them on their back till they were a year old. And they wanted them in their energy field. And it's very peculiar when you have a lot of kids. Like, I'll hold my baby like this, and the baby's head is down, and like the foot is up in the air, and I'm running after my toddler, and then there's my 4-year-old, and I'm potty training kids, and this baby's like hanging over like there, and he's thrilled. I'm always like, oh my God, here, let me put you in a beautiful little chair with a little blanket and something. They don't want it. They want to be held by the neurotic, crazy mother. I'm always like, okay, I don't get it. So there's some safety net about holding the baby. They feel good. And in China, you know, you'll see the mothers. I mean, now we're wearing our babies. When I came to Canada, I was the first and only woman wearing a baby. I mean, it was bizarre. People were like, oh my God, is that baby like growing out of her? Like they had no idea what it was, right? So babies like to be held in your energy field. And the more you learn about energy fields, which is very weird, it's a whole nother discussion, we could have it. But it's funny because my son's a physicist. He's getting his PhD in physics now. And he said, Ma, you can never talk about energy because you don't know anything about it, which is true. I don't. But you know right away if you like someone or don't. You know what I mean? You know right away if you like that Shabbos table or if you don't. That's all energy. But kids like to be in our energy field. So they like to be held. I mean, like I feel until your baby can pick up your cell phone, call 911 and say, help, this is my address. They're so vulnerable. Do you know what I mean? So they want to be held because it's a big, scary world around them, especially in Brooklyn. Think about it, honestly. I mean, the energy that's going on here. So if you hold your baby and your baby's happy, your arms are going to break. You're going to have a backache and need a chiropractic adjustment, but that's fine. We're concerned about babies that you hold and are screaming. Does that make sense? So they like to be in our energy field. That is definitely one philosophy that you can hold by. You can go by that one. I mean, my kids are spoiled, rotten, and obnoxious. So, you know, I held them all the time. But I do attached parenting, meaning I just believe that you need to just give to them and give to them and give to them. It's a very scary, cold world out there. Do you know what I mean? Like people, you know, so at least in the first 2 years of life, you want that child to have that comfort and that safety and that feeling of being protected, you know. I remember my first daughter went to, I don't know, pre-1A or something, and the teacher came over to me and said, if a kid trips and falls, your daughter's the first one there. And if a kid is feeling uncomfortable, why is it your kid runs there? And I was like, I guess because I was always there for her. And she knew that feeling of having somebody there. So that's what that's my parenting philosophy.
So how do you know if the baby is hungry again?
If you can't soothe them in your arms and they're still crying, feed them again. Yeah, feed them again. Unless we have a colicky reflux baby, and that's a whole nother.
Dirty diaper.
Yeah, dirty diaper, burp. Yeah, but if you can. Yeah. Yeah. And if you hold them and they're calm, I mean, again, you're going to have a broken arm a little bit, but if you can do things, then they'll let you know. And you have to talk to them all the time. Are you hungry? Do you have a diaper? You know, like I believe that newborns understand everything. I just do. I'm always like, hey, do you notice it's raining out today? And I've got a really busy day. So if I'm neurotic, it's not your fault, you know? So I really try to communicate with my kids, and I think they know everything that's going on. Yes. Any other questions? And then we're going to shut down. Anything else? Okay. Thank you so much. If anybody wants my book, I have 2 left because one of them is assigned to you. And thank you for joining us, and thank you for living Chassidus. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's a great, 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 great organization. Okay. All the best.
Question.
Yeah.
How much is
It's $200 for the initial and $125 for the follow-up. And it's worth every penny because formula is so much more expensive.
Worth every penny.
Yeah, yeah. It's
so,
really
but
important.
I'm having my first in 2 months.
Okay. Yeah.
So would you recommend to go before?
It's completely your choice.
I'm saying,
If you feel your nipples look a little difficult from all the pictures that I showed,
but are those
then
pictures like only nursing?
no, those are all day long.
Regular?
So if you have a flat nipple or a long nipple, then it's worth to get advice ahead of time so you know what to do those first 2 days in the hospital.
And you have a normal one?
Huh?